Get out. Now. Professor Diana Hartwell's finger pointed at the door like a loaded weapon. Her voice sliced through the lecture hall, where 40 graduate students watched a janitor freeze mid-step, his cleaning cart still rattling. But Marcus Webb didn't leave. He walked toward the chalkboard, his worn boots echoing against the silence. "Professor, there's an error in your third equation." Diana laughed. The students laughed. Then she wrote a problem so complex it had taken her 4 years to solve. "Solve this, and I'll marry you." What happens when the person you look down on sees what you completely missed? Comment below with your city, so I can see how far this story travels. The chalk hit the floor with a sound that seemed to echo forever. Professor Diana Hartwell stood frozen. Her hand still raised from writing the equation that was supposed to humiliate the janitor. But the janitor wasn't humiliated. He was reading her work, actually reading it, his eyes moving across the symbols with an intensity that made something in Diana's chest tighten. "What did you just say?" Diana's voice came out sharper than she intended. Marcus Webb looked at her, not at the floor, not at his cart, directly at her. "Your third line, Professor. The sign error propagates through the entire derivation. Your final answer is inverted." The lecture hall held its breath. 40 graduate students from Harvard, MIT, Princeton, the best young minds in theoretical physics, sat motionless, their expensive laptops forgotten. Diana Hartwell had never been wrong. Not publicly. Not in 15 years of teaching. Her PhD from Harvard hung on the wall behind her like a shield. Her publications in Nature and physical review letters lined her office shelves like trophies. She had been called a rising star. So many times the phrase had become meaningless. And now a janitor, a man in a faded blue uniform with a name tag that read Marcus, was telling her she had made a mistake. "This is a graduate-level lecture on quantum field theory," Diana said, her voice dropping to the temperature of ice. "Do you even know what these symbols mean?" Marcus didn't flinch. "The Lagrangian density. You're deriving the equations of motion using the Euler-Lagrange formalism. Standard procedure. But when you integrated by parts in line 3, you dropped a negative sign." Somewhere in the back, a student gasped. Diana's face flushed red. She spun toward the board, her eyes racing across her own handwriting. Her fingers trembled as she traced the derivation step by step, symbol by symbol. Line 1. Correct. Line 2. Correct. Line 3. Her stomach dropped. The janitor was right. For a moment, Diana couldn't breathe. The room seemed to tilt. She gripped the edge of the lectern to steady herself, her knuckles white against the polished wood. "Get out," she whispered. "Professor, I said get out." Diana's voice cracked across the room like a whip. "This is a classroom for serious scholars, not for maintenance workers who pretend to understand physics they have no business looking at." Marcus's jaw tightened. His hands curled into fists at his sides, then slowly relaxed. Without a word, he turned and walked toward the door, his cart squeaking softly in the crushing silence. But just before he reached the exit, Diana's voice stopped him. "Wait." Marcus paused, his hand on the doorframe. Diana's eyes glittered with something cold and dangerous. She strode to the chalkboard and began writing fast, aggressive strokes that filled the space with symbols so complex that several students leaned forward, squinting. "You think you understand physics?" Diana's voice dripped with contempt. "Then solve this." She stepped back, revealing an equation that seemed to pulse with malicious intent. It was a beast, a monster of nested integrals, tensor calculus, and nonlinear differential equations. The kind of problem that appeared in PhD dissertations, not undergraduate textbooks. The students exchanged nervous glances. Reed Lawson. Diana's star pupil from MIT went pale. He recognized the structure. This was Diana's own research. The problem that had earned her tenure, the problem that had taken her 4 years to crack, with a team of 3 postdocs and unlimited computational resources. "Solve this." Diana said each word a separate hammer blow, "and I'll marry you." The room erupted in nervous laughter. The absurdity of it, a prestigious professor offering marriage to a janitor over a physics problem was almost too much to process. This was humiliation dressed as humor, a public execution disguised as a joke. But Marcus didn't laugh. He turned around slowly, his eyes fixed on the equation. Something shifted in his expression, a flicker of recognition perhaps, or maybe calculation. He took a step toward the board. Then another. Diana's smile faltered. "What are you doing? Reading the problem, Professor?" "You can't possibly." Marcus picked up a piece of chalk. The laughter died instantly. The silence that followed was unlike anything the students had ever experienced. It was the silence of held breath, of suspended time, of a world about to change. Marcus's hand began to move. Three hours earlier, Marcus Webb had kissed his daughter goodbye in their small apartment in the Bronx. "Daddy, do you have to go?" Lily Webb, 9 years old, looked up at him with eyes that held too much understanding for a child her age. She was sitting up in bed, her favorite physics book, The Universe in a Nutshell, by Stephen Hawking, resting on her lap. Marcus knelt beside her, adjusting the blanket around her thin shoulders. "I'll be back before you wake up, sweetheart, I promise. Will you check my homework? I did the momentum problems you showed me." "All of them." Lily grinned, a flash of pride breaking through her fatigue. "All of them. And I figured out why the ball bounces higher when you drop it from further up. It's about potential energy converting to kinetic energy, right?" Marcus's heart swelled. His daughter was brilliant, truly, genuinely brilliant. At 9 years old, she was already working through concepts that most high schoolers struggled with. She had his mind, his passion for understanding how the universe worked. She also had his curse. The scar on Lily's chest, hidden beneath her pajamas, told a story that Marcus relived every single day. 2 surgeries. Months in the hospital. Bills that stacked up like accusations demanding payment for the audacity of keeping his daughter alive. And now, a 3rd surgery loomed on the horizon. The biggest one. The riskiest one. The one that would cost $400,000. "Daddy." Lily's voice pulled him back. "Are you okay?" Marcus forced a smile. "I'm fine, sweetheart. Just thinking about how proud I am of you." "You always say that." "Because it's always true." He kissed her forehead, breathing in the scent of her shampoo, memorizing the feel of her small hand in his. Every goodbye carried the weight of possibility. The possibility that something could go wrong, that her fragile heart could falter, that he could lose her the way he had lost everything else. "I love you, Lily." "Love you too, Daddy. To the moon and back." "To the moon and back. Times infinity." Marcus stood, grabbed his jacket from the hook by the door, and stepped into the night. The walk to Glenwood University took 37 minutes. Marcus knew every crack in the sidewalk, every flickering streetlight, every shadow between buildings. He had made this walk over 2,000 times in the past 6 years. Rain or shine, healthy or sick, hopeful or hopeless. The night shift at Glenwood paid $18.50 an hour. Not much. But the benefits, the health insurance that covered 80% of Lily's medical expenses, made it worth more than any salary could measure. What no one at Glenwood knew, what Marcus had never told a single soul in 6 years of pushing his cleaning cart through marble hallways, was that he had once walked these same halls as a student. Not just any student. A doctoral candidate in theoretical physics at Princeton University, recruited personally by Dr. Samuel Chen, one of the most respected physicists in the country. A young man whose professors had called him once in a generation. A scholar who had published 4 papers in top journals before the age of 25, who had won the NSF Graduate Research Fellowship, who had been on track to become one of the great scientific minds of his era. That man felt like a stranger now, a ghost from another life. Marcus checked in with the security desk, grabbed his cart from the maintenance closet, and began his rounds. Physics building first, then chemistry, then the library. 8 hours of emptying trash cans, mopping floors, and restocking supplies. But during the quiet moments, the precious minutes between classrooms when no one was watching, Marcus did something else entirely. He read. Not magazines, not newspapers. Physics journals. Archive preprints. Research papers so dense and technical that most professors would need weeks to digest them. Tonight's reading was a paper on gauge symmetry, breaking in quantum chromodynamics. Heavy stuff. Beautiful stuff. The kind of work that made Marcus's mind sing, even as his hands pushed a mop across linoleum. He was halfway through the abstract when he heard the voice. The covariant derivative transforms as... Marcus looked up. Classroom 217. Professor Hartwell's Advanced Quantum Field Theory Seminar. He'd cleaned this room hundreds of times, always careful to wait until the lecture ended. Tonight the lecture was running late. Marcus hesitated. He should move on, come back in an hour. But something in Diana Hartwell's voice, the confidence, the authority, pulled at him. He peered through the narrow window in the door. The chalkboard was covered in equations. Beautiful equations, actually. The kind of mathematical poetry that had once been Marcus's native language. And then he saw it. The error. It was small, just a minus sign that should have been a plus sign, but its implications cascaded through the entire derivation like a crack spreading through ice. The final result was wrong. Not just slightly wrong. Fundamentally, completely wrong. Marcus's hand was on the door before he realized what he was doing. Don't, he told himself. Walk away. This isn't your world anymore. But his feet carried him forward, through the door, into the lecture hall, where 40 graduate students and one Nobel Prize track professor were about to witness the impossible. What are you doing in my classroom? Diana Hartwell's voice hit Marcus like a physical force. He froze mid-step, suddenly aware of every eye in the room turning toward him. I'm sorry, Professor. I was just what? Interrupting a graduate seminar. Do you have any idea what we're discussing here? Marcus's throat tightened. He knew he should apologize, back out, return to the invisible existence that had kept him safe for 6 years. But the equation on the board screamed at him. The error pulsed like a wound demanding to be healed. Quantum field theory, Marcus said quietly. You're deriving the equations of motion for a gauge field using the Euler-Lagrange formalism. The room went silent. Diana's eyes narrowed. Excuse me. Your derivation, it's almost correct. But there's a sign error in line 3. When you integrated by parts, you forgot to account for the boundary term's orientation. Diana's face cycled through several emotions in rapid succession. Confusion, disbelief, rage. Who do you think you are? Just someone who noticed a mistake, Professor. Diana laughed, a sharp, brittle sound. A mistake? You're telling me, a tenured professor with a PhD from Harvard, that I made a mistake? And you're, what, a janitor? Maintenance specialist, Marcus said. But yes. Get out. Professor, if you just look at line 3. I said get out. Diana's voice rose to a shout. You have no right to be here, no qualifications to assess my work, no business pretending you understand physics that's far beyond your comprehension. Marcus felt the familiar burn of humiliation spreading across his face. 30 years ago he might have fought back. 20 years ago he would have argued his case with the fierce confidence of youth. But time and loss had worn those edges smooth. He had learned to swallow his pride for Lily's sake, to accept indignity as the price of keeping his daughter alive. He turned toward the door. That's right, Diana called after him, her voice dripping with satisfaction. Go back to your mops and trash cans. Leave the real thinking to people who actually earned the right to do it. Something snapped. Later, Marcus wouldn't be able to explain what made him stop, what made him turn around, what made him walk toward the chalkboard instead of away from it. Maybe it was the echo of his daughter's voice. Daddy, you're the smartest person I know. Maybe it was the ghost of his old self, the promising young physicist, who had never really died, just gone to sleep. Maybe it was simply that mathematics was truth, and truth didn't care about uniforms or degrees or social hierarchies. Whatever the reason, Marcus picked up a piece of chalk and began to write. Here, he said, his voice steady. This is where you went wrong. He corrected the sign error with a single stroke. And here's what the derivation should look like. His hand moved with a fluidity that surprised even him, chalk flowing across the board in elegant arcs and precise symbols. The correct derivation unfolded naturally, beautifully, each step following from the last, with the inevitability of water flowing downhill. When he finished, the room was silent. Diana stared at the board, her face pale. She checked his work once, twice, 3 times. Each time she arrived at the same conclusion. The janitor was right. For a long moment, no one moved. No one spoke. The only sound was Diana's ragged breathing and the soft buzz of the fluorescent lights. Then, Diana Hartwell did something that would set the next 6 months into motion, something that would change both their lives in ways neither could imagine. She laughed. It started as a chuckle, low and dangerous, then built into something louder, harsher. The students exchanged nervous glances, uncertain whether to join in or remain silent. Impressive. Diana said the word dripping with contempt. A parlor trick, a lucky guess. Professor, do you know how many people try to prove they're smarter than me? Diana strode to the board, her heels clicking against the floor like gunshots. Arrogant undergraduates, jealous colleagues, and now, janitors. She grabbed a fresh piece of chalk and began writing again. This time her strokes were aggressive, almost violent. You want to play in the big leagues? Fine. Let's play. The equation she wrote filled the entire board, a nightmare of nested integrals, tensor indices, and nonlinear terms that made even the most advanced students gasp. This problem, Diana announced, turning to face Marcus with a predator's smile, represents 4 years of my research. 4 years of work by some of the best minds in theoretical physics. It was the centerpiece of my tenure application and the foundation of 2 Nature papers. She set down the chalk and crossed her arms. Solve this and I'll marry you. The absurdity of the statement hung in the air like smoke. Students laughed nervously, treating it as the joke it was obviously meant to be, a final humiliation, a way to put the janitor in his place once and for all. But Marcus wasn't laughing. He was staring at the equation with an intensity that made Diana's smile flicker. Something in his eyes had changed. The quiet resignation was gone, replaced by something sharper, fiercer. Recognition. He knew this problem. Not because he had seen Diana's research, but because he had worked on something similar years ago, in another life in a small Princeton office, where the future had seemed boundless. Marcus stepped forward and picked up the chalk. What are you doing? Diana's voice held a note of uncertainty. Accepting your challenge, Professor. That's ridiculous. You can't possibly. 90 minutes. Diana blinked. What? I'll solve it in 90 minutes. That's the standard time limit for the Newton Prize competition, isn't it? The mention of the Newton Prize sent a ripple through the room. The most prestigious physics competition in the country. $50,000 and automatic admission to any PhD program. Diana had been planning to announce the competition next week. She was the head of the judging committee. The problem on the board was supposed to be her secret weapon, a trap, to ensure only properly trained candidates could advance. And now, a janitor was challenging her with it. Fine. Diana heard herself say the word escaping before she could stop it. 90 minutes. And when you fail, and you will fail, I want you to resign from this university and never set foot in my building again. Marcus met her eyes. And if I succeed? Diana's lip curled. You won't. But if I do? The room held its breath. If you succeed. Diana said each word precise and poisonous. I'll personally sponsor your entry into the Newton Prize competition. I'll admit to this entire room that I underestimated you, and I'll make sure everyone knows that a janitor proved me wrong. Marcus nodded slowly. Then let's begin. He turned to the board, raised the chalk, and started to write. The clock on the wall read 8:47 p.m. In 90 minutes, everything would change. Diana Hartwell's hands were trembling. She hid them behind her back, unwilling to let anyone see the cracks forming in her composure. The janitor Marcus, she had heard someone whisper, had been writing for 45 minutes and she still couldn't find a mistake. That wasn't possible. It simply wasn't possible. This problem had defeated 3 postdoctoral researchers. It had consumed 4 years of her life, nights without sleep, weekends without rest. She had cried over this problem, screamed at it, nearly quit the field because of it. And now, a man in a blue uniform was dismantling it with the casual precision of someone solving a crossword puzzle. Professor Hartwell, Reed Lawson. Her best student approached with a tablet in his hands. "You need to see this." Diana glanced at the screen. Social media. Someone had started live streaming the confrontation, and the viewer count was climbing rapidly. 3,000, 5,000, 8,000. Janitor V's professor was trending. "Turn it off," Diana snapped. "I can't. It's not my stream. Someone in the back row." "Then find them and make them stop." But even as she spoke, Diana knew it was too late. The story was already out of her control. Whatever happened in the next 45 minutes would be witnessed by thousands of people, recorded and shared and analyzed until every detail became part of the permanent record. She looked back at Marcus. He was writing faster now, his chalk strokes confident and sure. The solution was taking shape on the board, not the messy, desperate scribbling of someone guessing, but the clean, logical progression of someone who knew exactly where he was going. How? The question burned in Diana's mind. How could a janitor solve a problem that had stumped some of the best physicists in the country? She found herself moving closer to the board, drawn by a force she couldn't name. Her eyes traced Marcus's work, following the mathematical logic step by step, line by line, symbol by symbol. And then she saw it. Not an error. Not a mistake. Something worse. Marcus was using a method she had never considered, a classical approach rooted in principles that predated modern computational techniques. Where Diana had attacked the problem with brute mathematical force, Marcus was finding elegance. Where she had needed 4 years and a team of researchers, he was finding shortcuts hidden in the structure of the problem itself. It was beautiful. It was terrifying. It was correct. 15 minutes, Diana announced, her voice barely steady. 15 minutes remaining. Marcus didn't look up. He didn't acknowledge her or the students or the cameras that had now multiplied throughout the room. He was lost in the mathematics, communicating in a language that transcended words or social status or university hierarchies. The final 15 minutes passed in breathless silence. At 10:17 p.m., Marcus set down the chalk. He turned to face Diana, his expression unreadable. "The solution is complete, Professor." The words hung in the air, heavy with implications neither of them fully understood. Diana walked to the board. Her legs felt weak, her heart pounding against her ribs. She examined the solution line by line, symbol by symbol, praying for an error that would restore the natural order of things. There was no error. The solution was perfect. More than perfect, it was elegant, insightful, and demonstrated a depth of understanding that Diana herself had never achieved. A janitor had just solved her life's work in 90 minutes. The room erupted. Students leaped to their feet, some applauding, others shouting questions, still others frantically typing on their phones. The live stream viewership had surged past 50,000. Across the country, physics departments were lighting up with the news. But Diana heard none of it. She stood before the chalkboard, staring at the proof of her own limitations, feeling the foundations of her worldview crumble beneath her feet. Who was this man? What was he? And why? Why was he working as a janitor? The question would haunt her for weeks. It would drive her to dig into Marcus Webb's past, to uncover secrets she wasn't prepared to find, to confront truths about herself that she had spent a lifetime avoiding. But that night, standing in the wreckage of her certainty, Diana Hartwell could only manage one word. How? Marcus looked at her, not with triumph, not with contempt, but with something that looked almost like sadness. Mathematics doesn't care about degrees, Professor. It only cares about truth. He picked up his cleaning cart and pushed it toward the door. Wait, Diana called out. You can't just... But Marcus was already gone. The squeaking of his cart, fading into the empty hallway, leaving Diana alone with the ghost of everything she thought she knew. The hallway stretched before Marcus like a tunnel leading back to reality. His hands were shaking, not from fear, but from something far more dangerous. Hope. For 90 minutes, he had been himself again. The real Marcus Webb. The physicist. The scholar. The man who had once believed the universe held no secrets he couldn't unlock. Now that man retreated back into the shadows, replaced by the janitor who had bills to pay and a daughter to keep alive. Marcus pushed his cart toward the maintenance closet, his footsteps echoing against the marble floors. Behind him, he could still hear the commotion in classroom 217, excited voices, the buzz of phones. Diana Hartwell's sharp commands cutting through the chaos. He had made a mistake. A terrible, wonderful, irreversible mistake. For 6 years, Marcus had survived by being invisible. He had perfected the art of looking down, saying little, and disappearing into the background of other people's lives. Janitors weren't people to most of the faculty and students at Glenwood. They were furniture, functions, necessary inconveniences that kept the buildings running while the real work of academia continued above their heads. That invisibility had protected him. It had allowed him to work his shifts, collect his paycheck, and maintain the health insurance that kept Lily alive. It had given him access to the physics journals in the library, the quiet corners where he could read and think and remember who he used to be. Now everyone knew his face. His phone buzzed in his pocket. Then again. Then continuously a relentless vibration that told him the world was trying to reach him. Marcus ignored it. He finished his rounds mechanically, emptying trash, mopping floors, restocking supplies, his body moving through familiar motions, while his mind raced through implications. Diana Hartwell would not let this go. She was too proud, too invested in her own superiority. Tomorrow or the next day or next week, she would find a way to retaliate, to restore the natural order, to prove that a janitor had no business challenging a Harvard professor in her own lecture hall. And Marcus would let her. He would absorb whatever punishment she devised because fighting back meant drawing attention, and attention meant scrutiny, and scrutiny meant questions he couldn't afford to answer. At 3:47 a.m., Marcus clocked out and began the long walk home. The Bronx was quiet at this hour. Streetlights cast pools of yellow on empty sidewalks. Somewhere in the distance, a car alarm wailed and fell silent. Marcus walked with his hands in his pockets, his breath forming small clouds in the cold November air. His phone had accumulated 47 messages and 16 missed calls. He scrolled through them without responding. Old colleagues from Princeton who had seen the live stream. Former professors expressing shock and concern. 3 journalists requesting interviews. And one message that made his blood freeze. Dr. Samuel Chen. Marcus, we need to talk. Call me. Samuel Chen, his doctoral advisor. The man who had believed in Marcus when no one else did. The man who had watched helplessly as his most promising student walked away from everything. Marcus deleted the message. Some doors once closed should stay closed. He climbed the 4 flights of stairs to apartment 4C, careful to step over the broken 3rd step that the landlord had promised to fix 6 months ago. The key turned in the lock with a familiar click, and Marcus slipped inside, moving silently through the darkness. Lily's door was slightly open. He paused there, watching her sleep, her chest rising and falling in the steady rhythm that he had learned never to take for granted. The scar on her chest was hidden beneath her pajamas, but Marcus saw it anyway. He always saw it. That thin line of tissue was a map of everything he had sacrificed: his career, his dreams, his marriage, his identity. And he would do it all again in a heartbeat. Daddy? Marcus stepped into the room. Hey, sweetheart. I didn't mean to wake you. You didn't. I was waiting. Lily's eyes found him in the darkness. Did something happen? Marcus sat on the edge of her bed. What makes you say that? You're walking different, like when you're thinking about something really hard. 9 years old and she could read him like a book. Marcus smiled despite himself. Something happened at work tonight. It's complicated. Tell me. So he told her. Not all of it, not the humiliation, not the anger, not the fear of what came next, but the essential truth. A professor had made a mistake. Marcus had corrected it. Things got heated. Lily listened with the serious attention she gave to everything that mattered. Did you solve her equation? Yes. Was it hard? Marcus considered the question. It was hard for her. It took her 4 years. For me, I don't know. It felt like remembering something I'd forgotten. Lily was quiet for a moment. Then, Daddy, why don't you teach physics instead of cleaning buildings? The question hit Marcus like a physical blow. Not because it was unexpected. Lily asked variations of it regularly, but because tonight, for the first time in years, he didn't have a ready answer. It's complicated, sweetheart. You always say that. Because it's true. Lily reached out and took his hand. Her fingers were small and warm, and Marcus felt his throat tighten. I don't want you to be sad, Daddy. I'm not sad. Yes, you are. You hide it really well, but I can tell. She squeezed his hand. Maybe this professor lady will help you remember, like the physics helped you remember tonight. Marcus couldn't speak. He leaned down and kissed her forehead, breathing in the familiar scent of her shampoo. Go to sleep, Lily. We'll talk more tomorrow. Promise? Promise. He stayed until her breathing deepened, then slipped out of the room and closed the door behind him. The small kitchen table was covered with papers, medical bills, insurance statements, bank notices, the familiar wallpaper of financial catastrophe that had decorated his life for nearly a decade. Marcus sat down heavily and pulled the newest letter from the pile. Dr. Nina Parkhurst, Lily's cardiologist, had written last week with an update on the upcoming surgery. The numbers hadn't changed. $400,000. Insurance would cover 60%. The remaining 40%, $160,000, might as well have been $16 million. Marcus had $7,000 in savings. He made $38,000 a year before taxes. Even if he worked double shifts for the next decade, he would never accumulate enough. But the surgery couldn't wait a decade. Dr. Parkhurst had been clear about that. The defect is growing with her heart, the doctor had explained at their last appointment. Right now it's manageable, but within 6 to 8 months, we'll reach a point where surgery becomes significantly more dangerous. And beyond a year. She hadn't finished the sentence. She hadn't needed to. Marcus stared at the letter until the words blurred. Then he folded it carefully, slipped it back into its envelope, and placed it on the stack with all the others. 7 months. He had 7 months to find $160,000, or he would lose the only thing in this world that mattered. The weight of it pressed down on him, familiar and crushing. This was why he had stayed invisible for 6 years. This was why he had swallowed his pride and accepted humiliation and pretended to be less than he was. Because fighting back meant risking everything: his job, his insurance, his daughter's life. And now he had thrown that all away for the momentary satisfaction of correcting a professor's equation. Marcus put his head in his hands and let the silence of the apartment wrap around him. Tomorrow he would figure out how to survive the consequences. Tonight, he would allow himself to remember. 10 years earlier, Marcus Webb had been a different man. At 24, he was the youngest doctoral candidate in Princeton's physics department, working on theoretical problems that made senior professors shake their heads in amazement. Dr. Samuel Chen, his advisor, had called him the most naturally gifted physicist I've encountered in 40 years of teaching. Marcus had believed him. In those days, he believed everything was possible. The coffee shop on Nassau Street was where he did his best thinking. A cramped, noisy space where the espresso machine hissed constantly and students argued about Kant and Foucault at neighboring tables. Marcus would sit in the corner booth with his laptop and notebooks working through equations while the world buzzed around him. That's where he met Rachel. She was a waitress 22, with dark hair pulled back in a ponytail and eyes that seemed to hold secrets. The first time she brought him coffee, she glanced at his notebook and frowned. "Is that math?" Marcus looked up startled. Waitresses didn't usually engage. "Physics, actually." "What's the difference?" "About 4 years of graduate school and a lot of existential despair." She laughed, a bright, unexpected sound that cut through the coffee shop noise. "You're funny. Physicists aren't supposed to be funny." "We're not supposed to be a lot of things." Rachel lingered by his table, ignoring the customers trying to flag her down. "So what are you working on? In small words, please." "I barely passed algebra." Marcus found himself explaining his research the way particles behaved in extreme conditions, the mathematics that described the fundamental forces of nature. He simplified ruthlessly, searching for metaphors and analogies, and something strange happened. Rachel understood. Not the equations, not the technical details, but the wonder of it. The sense that the universe was a puzzle waiting to be solved, and that every equation was a key that might unlock another door. "That's beautiful," she said when he finished. "I never thought of physics that way." Most people don't. Their loss. She smiled at him. Really smiled, not the professional courtesy she gave other customers. "I'm Rachel, by the way." "Marcus." "Well, Marcus, your coffee's getting cold. Should I bring you another one?" "Please." She did. And the next night, and the night after that. What started as friendly conversation evolved into something deeper. Shared meals, long walks through campus evenings spent talking about everything and nothing. Marcus had never been good at relationships. Physics had always been his first love, demanding and jealous. But Rachel was different. She didn't compete with his work. She celebrated it. She asked questions that forced him to think differently, to see his research through fresh eyes. And when she looked at him, she saw Marcus Webb, the person, not Marcus Webb, the prodigy. They fell in love fast, too fast, probably. Within 6 months, they were living together in a tiny apartment off campus. Within 8 months, Rachel was pregnant. "What are we going to do?" she asked, her voice shaking as they stared at the positive test. Marcus didn't hesitate. "We're going to be parents." "But your PhD?" "Can wait." "Marcus, you're so close." "I don't care." He took her hands in his. "This baby is more important than any degree. We'll figure it out, together." Rachel cried then, and Marcus held her, and for a moment he truly believed that everything would be fine. Lily was born on a January night so cold that the hospital windows had frosted over. Marcus sat in the delivery room holding Rachel's hand, watching as their daughter entered the world. She was perfect. Tiny and red-faced, with a surprisingly loud cry that echoed through the room. The doctor placed her on Rachel's chest, and Marcus felt something shift inside him, a fundamental reorganization of priorities as profound as any physics equation. This small, squirming creature was now the center of his universe. "She's beautiful," Rachel whispered, tears streaming down her face. "She's ours," Marcus said, and the words felt like a prayer. They named her Lily after Rachel's grandmother. For 3 months they lived in a haze of sleepless nights and overwhelming joy. Marcus took a leave of absence from Princeton, telling his advisor he needed time to adjust to fatherhood. Dr. Chen was understanding but concerned. "Don't stay away too long," he warned. "The physics world moves fast. If you lose momentum now—" "I won't," Marcus promised. "I just need a few months." He believed it. He had no reason not to. Then Lily stopped breathing. It happened on a Tuesday afternoon. Marcus was in the kitchen heating a bottle when he heard Rachel scream. He ran to the nursery and found Lily turning blue in her mother's arms, her tiny chest heaving with desperate, ineffective gasps. The ambulance ride was a blur. The emergency room was a nightmare. And when Dr. Nina Parkhurst finally emerged from the examination room, her face told Marcus everything he needed to know before she spoke a single word. Your daughter has a ventricular septal defect, a hole in her heart. It's congenital, she was born with it, but it didn't present symptoms until now. Rachel collapsed against Marcus, sobbing. He held her upright, his mind racing through implications. Can it be fixed? Yes, with surgery, but the procedure is complex and expensive. She'll likely need multiple operations as she grows. How expensive? Dr. Parkhurst hesitated. The first surgery alone will cost approximately $280,000. The number hung in the air like a death sentence. Their insurance covered 50%. They would still owe $140,000 more than Marcus could earn in 4 years. What followed was a descent into a particular kind of hell. Marcus returned to Princeton, trying to balance doctoral research with constant hospital visits and mounting bills. He took on tutoring jobs, grading positions, anything that paid. Rachel worked double shifts at the coffee shop, her body recovering from childbirth even as her spirit crumbled under the weight of fear. They fought constantly, about money, about time, about the future that was slipping away from them. We should ask your parents for help, Rachel said one night, her voice hollow with exhaustion. They don't have it. Then ask someone. Your advisor. The university. Anyone. I've asked. Everyone's sympathetic. No one has $140,000 lying around. The surgery couldn't wait. Lily's condition was deteriorating. Every day that passed increased the risk of permanent damage to her developing heart. Marcus did the only thing he could think of. He withdrew every penny from his retirement account, $12,000 accumulated from years of teaching assistantships. He took out credit cards, maxing them out one after another. He sold his car, his books, his laptop. It wasn't enough. It was never going to be enough. The surgery happened on a gray March morning. Marcus and Rachel sat in the waiting room for 7 hours, holding hands without speaking, watching the clock tick toward an unknown verdict. When Dr. Parkhurst finally emerged, she was smiling. The surgery was successful. Lily is going to be okay. Rachel collapsed in relief. Marcus thanked the doctor, thanked God, thanked everyone and everything in the universe for giving his daughter a second chance. But the bills kept coming. Within weeks, the hospital's collection department was calling daily. The credit card companies sent threatening letters. The bank froze their joint account pending resolution of overdraft charges. Rachel stopped sleeping. She would pace the apartment at night, Lily's medical records spread across the kitchen table, calculating and recalculating numbers that never added up. We can't do this, she said one night. Marcus, we can't survive this. We will. Somehow we will. How? Tell me how, because I've run the numbers 1,000 times, and there's no way out. I'll find more work. You're already working 18 hours a day. We never see each other. We never see Lily. This isn't living, Marcus. This is dying slowly. What's the alternative? Giving up. Rachel didn't answer. She just stared at the papers on the table, her eyes empty. Marcus should have seen it coming. The signs were all there. The withdrawal, the silence, the way Rachel's gaze would drift to some distant point whenever Lily cried. But he was too tired, too desperate, too focused on survival to recognize that his wife was drowning. The note was written on a piece of paper torn from a legal pad. Marcus found it on the kitchen table when he came home from his tutoring job, Lily crying in her crib. I can't do this anymore. I'm sorry. I love Lily, but I'm not strong enough for this. Please don't look for me. Rachel. The closet was empty. The joint bank account was wiped clean. She had taken the $300 remaining after the latest round of bills. Marcus stood in the middle of the apartment, the note crumpling in his fist, his daughter's cries filling his ears. He was 25 years old. His wife had left him. His daughter needed surgeries he couldn't afford. His academic career was in ruins. The choice was brutal, but simple. The next morning, Marcus Webb withdrew from Princeton's doctoral program. He thanked Dr. Chen for years of mentorship and ignored the older man's pleas to reconsider. He moved to a cheaper apartment in the Bronx, found a job as a janitor at Glenwood University for the health insurance, and began the long, invisible years of keeping his daughter alive. The dreams came every night, not nightmares exactly, but memories of the life he might have had. Standing at a lectern explaining physics to eager students, publishing papers that changed how people understood the universe, being called Professor Webb by colleagues who respected his mind. Each morning, Marcus would wake before dawn, lock those dreams away, and become the man Lily needed him to be. A father, a provider, a janitor, and he told himself it was enough. Tonight, standing in Diana Hartwell's lecture hall, chalk dust on his fingers, and 40 years of suppressed ambition burning in his chest, Marcus Webb had finally admitted the truth. It wasn't enough. It had never been enough. And maybe, just maybe, it was time to stop pretending. The next morning, Marcus's phone rang at 7 a.m. He was already awake making breakfast for Lily, who had a half day at school. Marcus Webb. He recognized the voice immediately, sharp, professional, accustomed to being obeyed. Professor Hartwell. We need to talk. My office, 1 hour. The line went dead. Lily looked up from her cereal. Was that the professor lady? Yes. Is she still mad? Marcus poured himself a cup of coffee he wasn't sure he could stomach. I'm about to find out. Daddy. Lily's voice was serious, in the way only children's voices can be. Don't let her make you small. You're the biggest person I know. Marcus kissed her forehead. I love you, sweetheart. I love you too. To the moon and back. To the moon and back. Times infinity. 1 hour later, Marcus stood outside Diana Hartwell's office, his janitor's uniform feeling suddenly conspicuous. He had debated whether to change to wear something that commanded more respect, but in the end, he decided against it. This was who he was now. If Diana Hartwell couldn't accept that nothing he wore would change her mind. He knocked. Come in. Diana was sitting behind her desk, a fortress of polished mahogany covered with papers and framed photographs. Her awards lined the walls. Her diplomas gleamed in the morning light. Everything about the room was designed to intimidate, to remind visitors exactly where they stood in the academic hierarchy. Sit down, Mr. Webb. Marcus sat. For a long moment, Diana just looked at him, her expression unreadable. Then she opened a folder on her desk and began reading. Marcus Timothy Webb, born August 12, 1987, in Cleveland, Ohio. Bachelor's degree in physics from Ohio State University, summa cum laude. Enrolled in Princeton's doctoral program in 2012. Published 4 papers in Physical Review Letters and 2 in Nature Physics before the age of 25. Recipient of the NSF Graduate Research Fellowship. Described by Dr. Samuel Chen as the most naturally gifted physicist I've encountered in 40 years of teaching. She looked up. Withdrew from Princeton in March 2015, citing personal reasons. No academic activity since. Marcus said nothing. You've been working as a janitor at this university for 6 years. 6 years. And in all that time, not once did you mention that you were a physicist. Not once did you try to return to academia. Not once did you do anything except clean toilets and empty trash cans. It's not that simple. Then explain it to me. Diana's voice was sharp, but something else lurked beneath the sharpness. Something that almost sounded like genuine curiosity. Because I spent all night trying to understand how a man with your credentials ends up pushing a mop and I can't figure it out. Marcus looked at his hands. Worn, calloused. The hands of a laborer, not a scholar. I have a daughter, he said finally. She was born with a heart defect, multiple surgeries, constant medical bills. I needed a job with good health insurance more than I needed a PhD. Diana was quiet for a moment. And Princeton couldn't accommodate that. Princeton couldn't pay $140,000 in medical debt. Couldn't guarantee me a salary in 4 years when I needed money today. Couldn't give my daughter the coverage she needed to survive. So you threw away everything. I chose my daughter. Marcus's voice hardened. And I would do it again. Every single day I would make the same choice. The silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken understanding. Finally, Diana spoke again. The Newton Prize competition begins in 2 weeks. I know. I'm the head of the judging committee. I know that too. Diana leaned forward, her eyes locking onto his. I could destroy you, Mr. Webb. One word from me and your registration would be rejected. I could ensure that you never set foot in a competitive physics arena again. Yes, you could. But I won't. Marcus blinked. Why not? Diana picked up a piece of paper from her desk, the same problem she had written on the chalkboard the night before. His solution covered one side. Her original work covered the other. Because your solution was better than mine. The admission seemed to cost her something. Her jaw tightened, and she set the paper down with more force than necessary. I spent 4 years on this problem. I had a team of postdocs, unlimited computational resources, and the full support of the university. You solved it in 90 minutes with a piece of chalk and a method so elegant it made my entire approach look like brute force. She stood up, walking to the window. I've spent my entire career believing that proper training is what separates real scholars from amateurs, that credentials matter, that the system exists for a reason. She turned back to face him. And then you walked into my classroom and proved me wrong. I didn't mean to. Don't apologize. Don't you dare apologize. Diana's voice was fierce now. You had every right to correct me. You had every right to solve that equation. And you have every right to compete in the Newton Prize. She returned to her desk and pulled out a registration form. Your entry is already submitted. The competition begins in 14 days. First round eliminates half the candidates. Second round takes it to 6. Finals reduce it to 3. The prize is $50,000 and automatic admission to any PhD program in the country. Marcus stared at the form. Why are you doing this? Because I made you a promise. Diana met his eyes. Solve this and I'll marry you. I'm not marrying you, Mr. Webb, but I am keeping my word. You solved it. Now you get your chance to prove that last night wasn't a fluke. She extended the form across the desk. Don't make me regret this. Marcus took the paper. His hands were steady, even though his heart was pounding. I won't. He stood to leave, then paused at the door. Professor Hartwell. Yes. Thank you. Diana Hartwell looked at him for a long moment. Don't thank me yet. The competition hasn't started. And I promise you, Mr. Webb, I don't lose gracefully. Marcus nodded and stepped into the hallway, the registration form clutched in his hand. The war had just begun. The 2 weeks before the Newton Prize competition passed in a blur of sleepless nights and quiet desperation. Marcus worked his shifts at Glenwood, pushing his cart through familiar hallways, but nothing felt the same. Students who had once looked through him now stared openly. Professors who had never acknowledged his existence nodded as he passed. The janitor, who had challenged Diana Hartwell, had become a legend whispered about in coffee shops and study halls across campus. Marcus hated every moment of it. He prepared alone, studying in the small hours between his shift and Lily's wake-up time. His old Princeton notebooks, preserved in a box at the back of his closet for nearly a decade, became his constant companions. The mathematics came back slowly at first, like a language half forgotten, but with each passing night, the fluency returned. Lily noticed the change. You're smiling more, she observed one morning over breakfast. Even when you're tired. Am I? Yes, you look like you do when you're reading your physics books. Like your brain is happy. Marcus reached across the table and squeezed her hand. My brain is very happy, sweetheart. Because of the competition. Because I get to remember who I used to be. The anonymous messages continued. Threatening texts from unknown numbers. Emails warning him to withdraw. Someone slipped a note under his apartment door that read, Janitors don't belong in academic competitions. Save yourself the embarrassment. Marcus threw them all away without reading twice. 3 days before the competition, his phone rang with a number he didn't recognize. "Hello? Marcus, it's Samuel." The voice hit him like a punch to the gut. Dr. Samuel Chen, his former advisor. The man whose mentorship he had abandoned without explanation, whose calls and letters he had ignored for nearly a decade. "Samuel, I don't know what to say." "You could start with hello." Marcus laughed despite himself. "Hello. There. That wasn't so hard." A pause. "I saw the video, Marcus. The whole world saw it. You solved Diana Hartwell's dissertation problem in 90 minutes. It wasn't that impressive." "Don't do that. Don't diminish what you did." Samuel's voice sharpened with familiar authority. "I watched that live stream 3 times. Your method was brilliant, original, the kind of insight that made me believe you would change physics." Marcus said nothing. "You disappeared, Marcus. 10 years ago you walked out of my office and vanished. No explanation, no goodbye. I spent months trying to reach you." "I know. I'm sorry." "I don't want your apology. I want to understand. What happened?" So Marcus told him. Everything. Lily's diagnosis, the surgery, the debt, Rachel leaving, the choice between his career and his daughter's survival. When he finished, Samuel was quiet for a long time. "You should have told me." "What could you have done?" "I don't know. Something. Anything." Samuel's voice cracked slightly. "You were the best student I ever had, Marcus. I would have moved mountains for you." "The mountains were too big, Samuel. I had to make a choice." "And now?" Marcus looked at the registration form on his kitchen table. "Now I'm trying to find out if I made the right one." "The competition?" "Yes." "Diana Hartwell is formidable. You know that." "I know." "She'll try to destroy you. Her pride won't allow anything else." "I know that too." Samuel was quiet again. Then, "I'm flying to New York. I'll be there for the finals." "You don't have to. I want to watch my best student remind the world who he is, and this time when it's over, you're not disappearing again." "Understood." Marcus felt something loosen in his chest. "Understood. Good. Now go prepare. And Marcus?" "Yes. Trust your instincts. They were always better than anyone else's." The line went dead. Marcus stared at his phone for a long moment, then picked up his notebook and got back to work. The morning of the first round arrived cold and clear. Marcus stood outside the competition hall wearing the same clothes he wore to his janitorial shifts, because he had nothing better. Around him, the other competitors gathered in clusters, graduate students from Harvard, MIT, Yale, Stanford, each one dressed in clothes that probably cost more than Marcus's monthly rent. They stared at him with expressions ranging from curiosity to contempt. Reed Lawson. Diana's star student from MIT approached with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "So, you're the famous janitor. And you're the famous Reed Lawson. You've heard of me. I've read your papers. The one on quantum entanglement in condensed matter systems was solid work." Reed's expression flickered. "You read my papers?" "I read a lot of things. The night shift leaves plenty of time for study." Before Reed could respond, the doors opened. Diana Hartwell stood at the entrance, resplendent in a tailored suit that screamed authority. "Welcome to the Newton Prize competition," she announced. 12 of you will enter. Only one will win. Let's begin." The first round was designed as a filter 3 problems 90 minutes designed to separate the serious contenders from the pretenders. Marcus recognized Diana's hand in the difficulty level. These weren't warm-up questions. They were traps, each one requiring not just knowledge, but insight. The competitors took their positions at individual workstations. Marcus picked up his chalk, feeling its familiar weight in his fingers. The timer started. The first problem was a classical mechanics question disguised as something more complex. Marcus solved it in 12 minutes. The second was a quantum field theory derivation that most of the competitors attacked with brute computational force. Marcus found an elegant shortcut using symmetry principles, finishing in 15 minutes. The third problem made him pause. It was a statistical mechanics puzzle, but something about its structure felt wrong. Marcus stared at it, his mind racing through possibilities. The other competitors were scribbling furiously, filling their whiteboards with calculations. Then he saw it. The problem wasn't what it appeared to be. Hidden within the statistical mechanics framework was a topological question, a mathematical structure that changed everything about how the solution should be approached. Marcus smiled and began to write. When the timer ended, the judges collected the solutions. Diana stood at the front of the room, her face carefully neutral. Results will be posted in 1 hour. The top 6 competitors will advance to the semifinals. The hour passed in tense silence. Competitors paced, checked their phones, tried to predict their fate from the expressions of the judges. When Diana returned, she carried a single sheet of paper. The following candidates have advanced to the semifinals. She read the names without emotion. Reed Lawson, MIT, Tessa Chen, Harvard, Michael Okonkwo, Stanford, Jennifer Walsh, Yale, David Kim, Princeton. She paused. Marcus felt his heart stop. Marcus Webb, Glenwood University, maintenance staff. A murmur rippled through the room. Marcus exhaled slowly. Diana's eyes found his across the room. Something flickered in them. Not hatred exactly, but something close. Congratulations to those advancing. The semifinals begin in 1 hour. The semifinal round was brutal. 3 new problems, each more complex than the last. The 6 remaining competitors bent over their whiteboards, chalk-flying minds racing. Marcus worked steadily, methodically. The first problem was a quantum computing challenge that required both theoretical insight and practical reasoning. He solved it using a combination of classical and modern approaches, weaving together techniques that surprised even himself. The second problem was pure mathematics, a proof involving infinite series that seemed designed to consume time. Marcus found a shortcut through classical analysis, the kind of elegant solution that made the problem look simple in retrospect. The third problem stopped him cold. It was a research-level question in quantum field theory, the exact type of problem Marcus had been working on when he left Princeton. For a moment, he was transported back to his tiny office. Notebooks spread across his desk, the future stretching out before him like an endless highway. Then he shook himself back to the present and began to write. When the timer ended, Marcus stepped back from his whiteboard, exhausted but satisfied. His solution wasn't perfect. He could see ways to improve it, but it was complete and correct. The judges conferred. Diana stood apart from them, her arms crossed, her expression unreadable. Finally, she stepped forward. The 3 finalists for the Newton Prize are Reed Lawson, Tessa Chen, Marcus Webb. The room exploded with murmurs. 3 competitors, 1 from MIT, 1 from Harvard, 1 janitor. Diana's voice cut through the noise. The final round will take place tomorrow at 2 p.m. Be prepared for the most challenging problem of your academic careers. She turned and walked out without another word. That night, Marcus sat with Lily in her small bedroom, reading her favorite book about the solar system. She had memorized every fact, every figure, every tiny detail, but she still loved hearing him read it aloud. "Daddy?" "Yes, sweetheart." "Are you going to win tomorrow?" Marcus closed the book slowly. "I don't know, honey. The other competitors are very smart." "But you're smarter." "What makes you say that?" Lily looked at him with the complete certainty that only children possess. "Because you're my daddy, and my daddy is the smartest person in the world." Marcus pulled her into a hug, burying his face in her hair. "I love you, Lily. Whatever happens tomorrow, I need you to know that." "I know, Daddy." She pulled back and looked at him seriously. "But you're still going to win." "How can you be so sure?" "Because the universe wants you to." She said it like it was the most obvious thing in the world. You taught me that physics is about understanding how the universe works, and I think the universe works by helping people who deserve it. Marcus stared at his daughter, momentarily speechless. When did you get so wise? Lily grinned. I learned from watching you. He tucked her in, kissed her forehead, and sat with her until she fell asleep. Then he went to the kitchen table and studied until dawn. The final round drew a crowd unlike anything the Newton Prize had ever seen. The main auditorium was packed, 800 seats filled with students, faculty, and curious onlookers who had heard about the janitor who dared challenge the academic elite. Camera crews from 3 major networks lined the back wall. The live stream had already exceeded 200,000 viewers, with more joining every minute. Marcus stood at his workstation, chalk in hand, trying to ignore the weight of so many watching eyes. Beside him, Reed Lawson looked confident, almost relaxed. Tessa Chen was pale, but focused, her fingers drumming nervously against her thigh. Diana Hartwell took the stage. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the final round of the Newton Prize competition. Today's challenge will test not only mathematical skill, but true scholarly depth. The problem I am about to present represents the cutting edge of theoretical physics, a question that has occupied some of the finest minds in our field. She walked to the main board, chalk in hand. You will have 90 minutes. The competitor who demonstrates the most complete, rigorous, and insightful solution will be crowned champion. She began to write. The equation that appeared on the board was a monster-nested integrals, tensor calculus, nonlinear differential equations, intertwined in a mathematical labyrinth. Marcus recognized pieces of it, fragments of techniques he had learned at Princeton, but the complete structure was unlike anything he had encountered. Then slowly, recognition dawned. This wasn't just a competition problem. This was Diana's doctoral dissertation. The exact problem that had taken her 4 years to solve with full resources and a team of researchers. She had weaponized her own work against him. Marcus looked at Diana. She met his gaze with a small, cold smile. Your 90 minutes begin now. The first 30 minutes were pure agony. Reed and Tessa immediately began attacking the problem with conventional methods, their whiteboards filling with neat, orderly calculations. Marcus stood frozen, his chalk hovering over empty space, his mind racing through possibilities and finding only dead ends. The problem was designed to require years of specialized knowledge that Diana had accumulated through a career of focused research. Her graduate students would recognize the techniques. They would know the approaches. Marcus did not. He tried one method, dead end. Another method, dead end. A third approach that showed promise before collapsing into mathematical chaos. 60 minutes passed. His whiteboard was nearly empty. The murmurs in the audience grew louder. Someone laughed nervously. Diana's commentary, delivered for the benefit of the cameras, dripped with barely concealed satisfaction. We're witnessing the fundamental difference between formal education and enthusiasm, she observed. Complex problems like this require years of systematic training. Without that foundation, she let the sentence hang in the air. Marcus's hands began to shake, not from fear, but from frustration. He could feel the solution hovering just beyond his reach, a shape in the fog that he couldn't quite grasp. 75 minutes. 15 minutes remaining. He closed his eyes. Lily's voice echoed in his memory. The universe works by helping people who deserve it. And then another voice, older and wiser. Trust your instincts. They were always better than anyone else's. Samuel Chen. Princeton. The office where Marcus had learned that physics wasn't about memorizing techniques. It was about seeing the universe's hidden structure. Marcus opened his eyes. He wiped his board clean and started over. This time he didn't try to match Diana's approach. He didn't attempt to reconstruct years of specialized research in minutes. Instead, he went back to fundamentals, the classical principles that had guided physics for centuries. Variational methods. Energy minimization. The old tools that modern physicists had abandoned in favor of computational brute force. His chalk began to move. Not fast, not frantically, but with a steadiness that silenced the murmurs in the audience. Each line followed logically from the last. Each step built towards something larger. 10 minutes remaining. Reed Lawson glanced at Marcus's board and froze. He had expected to see desperation, the wild scribbling of a man grasping at straws. Instead, he saw something that made his blood run cold. Elegance. 5 minutes remaining. Marcus's solution was taking shape now, a mathematical structure that approached Diana's problem from an entirely unexpected direction. Where she had used modern machinery, he used classical insight. Where she had relied on computational power, he found geometric shortcuts. 2 minutes remaining. Diana stepped forward, her face pale. She stared at Marcus's whiteboard, her eyes racing across the equations, searching for errors. There were none. 30 seconds remaining. Marcus wrote the final line of his solution. The derivation was complete, not just correct, but beautiful. A proof that transformed Diana's 4-year struggle into something almost simple. The timer buzzed. Marcus set down his chalk and turned to face the silent auditorium. For a moment, no one moved. No one spoke. The weight of what had just happened hung in the air like the aftermath of an explosion. Then, Samuel Chen stood up from his seat in the third row. His voice carried across the auditorium with the authority of 40 years in physics. Before the judges render their verdict, I have a disclosure to make. Diana's head snapped toward him. Dr. Chen, this is highly irregular. I know. But what we've just witnessed deserves context. Samuel walked toward the stage, his eyes fixed on Marcus. For the past decade, I've wondered what happened to my most brilliant student. The young man who published 4 papers in top journals before the age of 25, who was on track to revolutionize theoretical physics, who disappeared from Princeton without explanation and never returned. The audience fell into absolute silence. Marcus Webb completed all doctoral coursework with the highest marks. He passed his qualifying exams with distinction. He received the NSF Graduate Research Fellowship, one of the most competitive awards in science. Samuel's voice grew heavy. He was 6 months from completing a dissertation that would have made headlines. And then he left. Diana's face had gone white. What are you saying? I'm saying that Marcus Webb didn't fail out of academia. He didn't lack the intelligence or the training. He made a choice. Samuel turned to face the audience. His daughter was born with a congenital heart defect. She needed surgery, multiple surgeries, hundreds of thousands of dollars in medical bills. Marcus could have continued his research and hoped for the best. Instead, he walked away from everything: his career, his future, his dreams, to work a job with health insurance that would keep his daughter alive. A murmur swept through the crowd. For 9 years, Marcus Webb has worked as a janitor at this university. Not because he lacked ability, not because he couldn't compete with the so-called academic elite, but because he chose to be a father first. Samuel's voice cracked slightly. And tonight, with 90 minutes and a piece of chalk, he just solved a problem that took a Harvard professor 4 years to crack. The auditorium erupted. Students leaped to their feet. Applause thundered through the hall. The live stream comments exploded with messages of support and amazement. Diana Hartwell stood frozen at the front of the stage, staring at Marcus, as if seeing him for the first time. The judges huddled together, comparing notes, checking calculations. After 10 minutes, that felt like hours, the head judge, Dr. Eleanor Vance from MIT, approached the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, after careful review of all 3 solutions, the judges have reached a unanimous decision. She paused, her eyes sweeping across the expectant crowd. The winner of this year's Newton Prize by a significant margin is Marcus Webb. The noise that followed was deafening. Marcus stood motionless, unable to process what was happening. Students rushed toward him, shouting congratulations. Cameras flashed from every direction. Someone pressed a trophy into his hands, heavy golden reel. He had won. After 9 years of invisibility, of sacrifice, of quiet desperation, he had won. Through the chaos, Marcus saw Diana Hartwell still standing at the front of the stage. Their eyes met across the crowd. Something passed between them. Not friendship, not yet, but perhaps the beginning of understanding. Then a small voice cut through the noise. "Daddy!" Marcus turned. Lily was running toward him, tears streaming down her face. Samuel Chen following close behind with a broad smile. "Lily, how did you—" "Dr. Chen picked me up. He said it was important that I be here." She threw herself into his arms. "You won, Daddy. I knew you would. I told you the universe would help." Marcus held his daughter tight, burying his face in her hair, letting the tears come. For the first time in 9 years, Marcus Webb allowed himself to believe that maybe, just maybe, the universe wasn't finished with him yet. The applause continued for what felt like an eternity. Marcus held Lily against his chest, feeling her small heart beating against his steady, alive, miraculous. Around them, the auditorium had descended into beautiful chaos. Students chanted his name. Cameras flashed like lightning. Reporters shouted questions that blended into white noise. Samuel Chen placed a hand on Marcus's shoulder. "How does it feel?" Marcus looked at his old mentor, at the trophy in his hand, at his daughter's tear-streaked face pressed against his neck, like waking up from a very long dream. "The dream's not over yet." Samuel nodded toward the stage. "Look." Diana Hartwell was still standing there, frozen in place, while the world celebrated around her. The judges had dispersed. The other competitors had left the stage. But Diana remained, her eyes fixed on Marcus, with an expression that held something far more complex than defeat. "What do I do?" Marcus asked quietly. "That's not for me to say." Samuel squeezed his shoulder. "But whatever you decide, remember, she's not your enemy. She's someone who just learned that everything she believed was wrong. That's a hard thing to face." Before Marcus could respond, a woman in an expensive silk blazer cut through the crowd with the authority of someone accustomed to parting seas. Security guards flanked her on both sides. "Mr. Webb." Marcus recognized her face from magazine covers and business news. Evelyn Ashbourne, the billionaire philanthropist, whose foundation had funded the Newton Prize for the past decade. "Mrs. Ashbourne?" That was extraordinary. Her voice was crisp, businesslike, but her eyes held genuine warmth. "I've watched this competition for 15 years. I've never seen anything like what you just did." "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet." She glanced at Lily, still clinging to Marcus's neck. "This is your daughter." "Yes, this is Lily." Evelyn smiled, a real smile that softened her sharp features. "Hello, Lily. I'm Evelyn. Your father just did something very impressive." Lily pulled back slightly, studying the older woman with the fearless curiosity of childhood. "He's the smartest person in the world. I already knew he would win." Evelyn laughed. "I believe you did." She turned back to Marcus, her expression growing serious. "I understand your daughter has a heart condition, that she needs surgery." Marcus felt his body tense. "How do you know that?" "Dr. Chen told me. He also told me why you left Princeton, why you've spent the last 9 years working as a janitor." She paused. "The surgery costs $400,000. Your insurance covers 60%. I'll find a way to pay the rest." "No, you won't." Evelyn's voice was firm. "Because I'm going to pay it." Marcus stared at her. "I'm sorry. The full cost of your daughter's surgery. Whatever insurance doesn't cover, my foundation will handle. You won't pay a penny." The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. He actually staggered, and Samuel's hand on his back was the only thing that kept him upright. "I can't accept that." "You can, and you will." Evelyn's eyes softened. "Mr. Webb, I've spent 20 years trying to use my money to make a difference. Most of the time, I write checks to institutions. I fund programs. I sponsor initiatives. But every once in a while, I get to help a single person whose story reminds me why I started this foundation in the first place." She stepped closer, lowering her voice. "Your daughter is going to have her surgery. She's going to survive, and you're going to stop carrying this weight alone. Marcus's vision blurred. He blinked rapidly, trying to maintain composure, but the tears came anyway. Why? His voice cracked. You don't know me. You don't owe me anything. Because 9 years ago you gave up your dreams to save your daughter's life. And tonight you proved that sacrifice didn't kill who you are, it just delayed who you were meant to become. Evelyn smiled. I know a good investment when I see one. Lily looked up at her father with wide eyes. Daddy, are you crying? Marcus laughed through his tears. Yes, sweetheart, I'm crying. But you're happy, right? Yes. He pulled her closer. I'm very, very happy. Evelyn wasn't finished. She raised her voice, slightly attracting the attention of the nearby reporters and cameras. One more thing. Tonight's events have made something very clear to me. There are extraordinary people in this country who have been overlooked, not because they lack talent, but because they lack opportunity. People working jobs that hide their brilliance. People who never got the chance to show what they're capable of. She paused, letting the cameras capture every word. Effective immediately, the Ashbourne Foundation is establishing the Webb Fellowship. $15 million dedicated to identifying and supporting university employees, janitors, cafeteria workers, security guards, anyone who demonstrate academic potential. We're going to find the hidden geniuses among us and give them the chance they deserve. The auditorium erupted again. This time the applause was different, deeper, more resonant, carrying the weight of something larger than a single competition. Marcus looked at Evelyn Ashbourne, unable to find words. Don't thank me, she said, reading his expression. Thank your daughter. She's the reason you became the man who could inspire this. She nodded once, then turned and walked away, her security detail falling into formation around her. Samuel Chen appeared at Marcus's side again. Well, that was unexpected. Marcus laughed, a real laugh, the first in years, that didn't carry an undertone of exhaustion. Which part? The surgery or the $15 million? All of it. Samuel's eyes crinkled with warmth. But mostly you. Standing up there solving that problem, proving that 10 years couldn't erase what makes you special. He paused. I'm proud of you, Marcus. Not because you won, because you never gave up on who you are. I almost did. So many times. Almost doesn't count. A reporter broke through the security perimeter, microphone extended. Mr. Webb, can we get a statement? How does it feel to beat a Harvard professor at her own game? Marcus looked at Diana, still standing alone on the stage. The question felt wrong, a reduction of everything that had happened into a simple narrative of victory and defeat. It doesn't feel like beating anyone, he said quietly. It feels like remembering. Remembering what? Marcus looked down at Lily, then back at the reporter. That the universe works by helping people who deserve it. The reporter frowned, confused. I don't understand. Ask my daughter. She'll explain. Lily grinned up at the camera, showing the gap where her front tooth had fallen out last week. Hi, my daddy is the smartest person in the world, and the universe agrees. The clip would go viral within hours. By midnight, the hashtag #JanitorGenius had exploded across every social media platform. Marcus's face was everywhere on news broadcasts, in trending tweets, in viral videos that had already accumulated millions of views. The story was irresistible. A single father who gave up his dreams to save his daughter, who worked as a janitor for nearly a decade, who defeated one of the country's most prestigious professors in a public competition. But the story that spread fastest was the one that cut deepest. Someone had compiled Diana Hartwell's comments from the competition into a supercut. Every dismissive remark, every condescending observation, every moment where she had tried to humiliate Marcus in front of the cameras. This is precisely why serious mathematics requires formal training. Perhaps manual labor isn't compatible with serious academic activity. We're witnessing the fundamental difference between formal education and enthusiasm. The video was brutal. Watching it, Felt like watching someone slowly destroy themselves in real time, completely unaware that the world was watching. By morning, hashtag Kensington Cancelled was trending alongside hashtag Janitor Genius. Diana Hartwell sat in her office, the blinds drawn. Her phone turned off, watching the destruction of her reputation in real time on her laptop screen. The university president had called twice. The dean of the physics department had called 3 times. Her boyfriend, Dr. Clayton Reeves from Columbia, had called once to break up with her. "This is embarrassing, Diana." Clayton had said, his voice dripping with the same condescension she had once admired. "I can't be associated with someone who's become a national joke, you understand." She had hung up without responding. The academic community that had once celebrated her was now distancing itself with practiced efficiency. Colleagues who had sought her endorsement were suddenly unavailable. Journals that had published her work were reconsidering their editorial relationships. The speaking invitation for the American Physical Society conference had been quietly rescinded. Diana had spent 15 years building a reputation. It had taken one night to tear it down. But the worst part, the part that kept her staring at the ceiling at 3 in the morning, wasn't the professional destruction. It was the realization that she had earned every bit of it. She had looked at Marcus Webb and seen a janitor, a maintenance worker, someone beneath her notice. She had used her position, her authority, her platform to humiliate him publicly, to reinforce a hierarchy that she now realized was built on nothing but her own insecurity. And Marcus Webb, the man she had tried to destroy, had solved her life's work in 90 minutes. What did that say about her? About everything she had believed. A knock on her office door made her jump. "Go away." "Diana, it's me." She recognized the voice. Dr. Eleanor Vance, her oldest friend in academia, the woman who had been on the judging panel last night. "I said go away. I'm not leaving until you open this door." Diana sat motionless for a long moment. Then slowly she walked across the office and turned the lock. Eleanor stepped inside, her face etched with concern. "Jesus, Diana, you look terrible." "Thank you for that observation." "Have you slept?" "Have you seen the internet? Sleep is not exactly possible right now." Eleanor closed the door behind her and pulled a chair up beside Diana's desk. "I'm going to say something, and I need you to listen. Can you do that?" "Do I have a choice?" "Not really." Eleanor leaned forward. "What you did last night was wrong. The way you treated that man publicly, repeatedly in front of cameras was wrong. You know that." Diana said nothing. "But here's what I also know. You're not a monster, Diana. You're a brilliant physicist who got so caught up in protecting her position that she forgot what this field is supposed to be about." Eleanor paused. "The question is, what are you going to do now?" "What can I do? My career is over. My reputation is destroyed. Everyone I know is pretending they never knew me." "That's not true." "Really? Name one person who's reached out to support me." Eleanor was quiet for a moment. Then, "Marcus Webb." Diana's head snapped up. "What?" "He called me this morning, asked me to check on you, said he was worried about how you were handling everything." The words didn't make sense. Diana had tried to humiliate Marcus, to destroy him, to prove that he didn't belong in her world. And his response to her public disgrace was concern. "I don't understand." "Neither did I at first." Eleanor stood, walking to the window and pulling back the blinds slightly. "But then I watched his solution again. That proof he constructed, Diana, it wasn't just correct. It was beautiful. It was the kind of insight that comes from someone who truly loves physics, who sees it as something more than a career or a competition." She turned back to face Diana. "And I realized something. Marcus Webb doesn't hate you. He doesn't want revenge. He just wanted to be seen. To be recognized for who he actually is, not for the uniform he wears." Eleanor's voice softened. "You denied him that for years. Not just you, the whole system denied him. But when you gave him the chance to prove himself, he took it. And he won." So I should feel good about this. No, you should feel responsible. And then you should do something about it. Diana stared at her friend. Like what? Like talking to him. Like apologizing. Really apologizing, not just going through the motions. Like figuring out if the person you've been is the person you want to keep being. Eleanor walked to the door, then paused. The Diana I met 20 years ago would have been fascinated by Marcus Webb. She would have recognized his talent, celebrated his approach, maybe even collaborated with him. That woman is still in there somewhere. She opened the door. Find her. The door closed with a soft click. Diana sat alone in the silence, Eleanor's words echoing in her mind. Across campus, Marcus Webb was facing a different kind of chaos. His apartment had become a command center. Samuel Chen had taken over the kitchen table, fielding calls from universities around the country. Princeton, Harvard, MIT, Stanford, every major physics department wanted to talk about bringing Marcus back to complete his PhD. They're offering you everything, Samuel said, putting down his phone after the latest call. Full funding. Research assistantships. Your own laboratory. Princeton is even willing to credit your previous coursework and let you start the dissertation immediately. Marcus sat on the floor playing cards with Lily, half listening to the chaos swirling around him. And the surgery. Evelyn Ashbourne's foundation already submitted the paperwork. Dr. Parkhurst called this morning to confirm. Lily's surgery is scheduled for next month. Samuel's voice cracked slightly. It's really happening, Marcus. All of it. Lily looked up from her cards. Does this mean you're going to be a professor, Daddy? I don't know, sweetheart. Maybe. But you'll still have time to read to me, right? Marcus reached over and ruffled her hair. Always, no matter what happens. His phone buzzed. Another unknown number. He almost ignored it, but something made him answer. Hello? Mr. Webb, this is Diana Hartwell. Marcus went still. Lily looked up at him with curious eyes. Professor Hartwell? I need to speak with you. In person. Her voice was different than he'd ever heard it, stripped of its usual confidence, almost fragile. There are things I need to say, and they shouldn't be said over the phone. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. When? Tonight, my office, 8 o'clock. I'll be there. The line went dead. Lily tugged at his sleeve. Was that the professor lady? Yes. Is she still mad? Marcus thought about the sound of Diana's voice. The exhaustion, the uncertainty, the pain. No, sweetheart, I don't think she's mad anymore. Then what is she? Marcus looked at his daughter, at the innocent wisdom in her eyes. I think she's trying to figure out who she wants to be. Lily nodded seriously, as if this made perfect sense. You should help her. Why do you say that? Because that's what you do, Daddy. You help people understand things, even when they're scared. Marcus pulled her into a hug. When did you get so smart? I already told you. She grinned up at him. I learned from watching you. At 8 o'clock, Marcus stood outside Diana Hartwell's office for the second time in 2 weeks. The first time he had come as a janitor, summoned to explain himself. Now he came as something else entirely, a competitor who had become a champion, a worker who had become a symbol. But walking through those familiar hallways, Marcus didn't feel like a champion. He felt like what he'd always been, a father, a physicist, a man who had made sacrifices and survived them. He knocked. Come in. Diana was sitting behind her desk, but everything else was different. The lights were dim. The awards on the walls seemed to mock rather than impress. And Diana herself looked like someone who had aged years in the span of days. Thank you for coming. Thank you for inviting me. Diana gestured to the chair across from her desk. Marcus sat. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The silence was heavy, but not hostile. Two people on opposite sides of an invisible line, each waiting for the other to make the first move. Finally, Diana broke. I've been trying to figure out what to say to you all day. I wrote 3 different speeches, threw them all away. She laughed bitterly. Ironic, isn't it? I've spent my career being articulate, being persuasive, being in control of every conversation. And now I can't find words. Then don't look for them. Just say what you feel. Diana met his eyes. I'm sorry. The words hung in the air. I'm sorry for the way I treated you, for the things I said, for using my position to try to humiliate you in front of the world. Her voice shook. I looked at you and saw a janitor. I never bothered to see the person behind the uniform, and that makes me... She stopped, unable to continue. Human? Diana blinked. What? It makes you human. Professor Hartwell, everyone makes assumptions. Everyone has blind spots. The question isn't whether we have them, it's what we do when we realize they're there. But I was cruel. Deliberately, publicly cruel. Yes, you were. Diana flinched at the directness. And you're also the person who registered me for the competition when you didn't have to. The person who gave me a chance to prove myself. The person who kept her word even when she didn't want to. Marcus leaned forward. People aren't just one thing. They're complicated. They make mistakes. They grow. You're being remarkably forgiving for someone I tried to destroy. I spent 9 years cleaning toilets and emptying trash cans. I've learned not to waste energy on anger. Diana stared at him as if seeing him for the first time. How do you do that? Do what? Stay so calm. After everything that's happened, after everything I did to you. Marcus was quiet for a moment, considering the question. I have a daughter, he said finally. She's 9 years old. She has a heart condition that almost killed her, and she's going to need surgery that terrifies me more than anything I've ever faced. But every single day she wakes up with a smile. She asks questions about physics. She tells me I'm the smartest person in the world, even though I push a mop for a living. He paused. Lily taught me something. She taught me that the universe doesn't care about our grudges or our pride or our need to be right. It just keeps moving forward. And we can either move with it or we can stand still and let it leave us behind. Diana's eyes glistened. Your daughter sounds extraordinary. She is. She gets it from her father. A surprised laugh escaped Diana's lips. And there's the confidence. I prefer to call it clarity. Marcus smiled slightly. Professor Hartwell, I don't hate you. I don't want revenge. I don't need you to suffer for what happened. What I want is much simpler. What's that? For you to see me. Really see me. Not as a janitor, not as a competitor, not as a threat, just as a person who loves physics as much as you do. Diana was silent for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. I do see you now. And what I see terrifies me. Why? Because you're better than me, not just at physics. At being a person. You gave up everything for your daughter, and instead of becoming bitter, you became... this. She gestured vaguely. Whatever this is. This is just me, Professor Hartwell. The same person who was here all along. You just weren't looking. The truth of it settled over Diana like a weight. All those years of walking past maintenance staff without a glance. All those times she had dismissed people based on their position, their clothes, their job titles. All those opportunities to see the world differently, squandered in the name of protecting her own sense of superiority. How do I make this right? She asked. Not for my reputation, I don't care about that anymore. For me, for who I want to become. Marcus stood up slowly. That's not my question to answer. It's yours. He walked toward the door, then paused. But I will say this. The Newton Prize money, $50,000. It's going toward Lily's surgery. The rest is being covered by Evelyn Ashbourne. Diana nodded. I heard. That means I don't need the money. But there are other people who do. Other janitors, cafeteria workers, security guards, people who got lost in the system the way I almost did. He turned to face her. The Webb Fellowship is a start. But it needs people like you, people with credentials, connections, influence to make it work. To find the hidden geniuses, to give them chances. Diana stared at him. You're asking me to help? I'm asking you to decide who you want to be. He opened the door. Goodbye, Professor Hartwell. And then he was gone, leaving Diana alone with the echoes of everything she thought she knew and the terrifying possibility of who she might become. The night after their conversation, Diana Hartwell did something she hadn't done in 15 years. She called her mother. Diana, is everything all right? No, Mom, nothing is all right. And then she told her everything. The competition, the humiliation, the janitor who turned out to be a genius, the public destruction of her reputation, the hollow feeling that had replaced the certainty she had carried for so long. Her mother listened without interrupting. When Diana finally ran out of words, the silence on the line stretched for a long moment. Do you remember what your father used to say? Diana closed her eyes. Her father had been a high school physics teacher in a small town in Ohio. He had died when she was 16, leaving behind nothing but boxes of books and a daughter who swore she would become something more than he had been. He used to say a lot of things. He used to say that the measure of a person isn't what they achieve, it's what they help others achieve. Diana felt the words hit her like a physical blow. I forgot that. You didn't forget it. You just got lost. Her mother's voice was gentle but firm. The question is whether you're going to stay lost. Diana stayed on the phone with her mother for 3 hours. They talked about her father, about the dreams Diana had abandoned in pursuit of prestige, about the difference between success and meaning. By the time she hung up, the first light of dawn was creeping through her office windows. She hadn't slept. But for the first time in days, she knew what she needed to do. The next morning, Diana Hartwell walked into the university president's office and submitted her resignation as chair of the physics department. Diana, this is unnecessary. The controversy will pass. These things always do. This isn't about the controversy. Diana placed the letter on his desk. This is about who I want to be. She kept her professorship. She still loved physics, still wanted to teach, but she gave up the administrative power that had become so central to her identity. The corner office, the committee chairs, the speaking invitations and honorary positions, all of it gone. And then she made a phone call. Mr. Webb, this is Diana Hartwell. I have a proposal for you. 2 weeks later, Diana stood in front of a conference room filled with reporters and university officials. Marcus Webb stood beside her, Lily holding his hand. Good morning. Thank you all for coming. Diana's voice was steady, but her hands trembled slightly as she gripped the podium. 3 weeks ago, I made a public spectacle of myself by trying to humiliate a man I believed was beneath my notice. I used my position, my authority, and my platform to reinforce a hierarchy that I now understand is fundamentally flawed. She paused, letting the words sink in. Marcus Webb is one of the most brilliant physicists I have ever encountered. His solution to my dissertation problem wasn't just correct, it was more elegant, more insightful, and more creative than anything I could have produced. And for 9 years, he worked as a janitor at this university, while I walked past him without a second glance. The reporters scribbled furiously. Today, I am announcing my partnership with the Webb Fellowship. I will be donating $100,000 of my personal savings to the fund. I will be volunteering my time to mentor overlooked employees who demonstrate academic potential. And I will be spending the rest of my career trying to become worthy of the second chance I don't deserve. She turned to Marcus. Mr. Webb, I am sorry. Not for the cameras, not for my reputation, for you. For the years you spent invisible. For the dreams you had to abandon. For every time someone like me made you feel less than you are. Marcus stepped forward. The room fell silent. Professor Hartwell, I accept your apology, and I want you to know something. He looked at her with the same calm clarity that had characterized every one of their interactions. The day you wrote that equation on the board and dared me to solve it, That was the day everything changed. Not because I won, because you gave me a chance. A cruel chance, maybe. A chance designed to humiliate me, but a chance nonetheless. He paused. Sometimes the universe works through the people we least expect. Sometimes our worst moments become the catalysts for our best ones. You hurt me, Professor Hartwell, but you also opened a door I thought was closed forever. Diana's eyes glistened. So here's what I propose. Let's stop being enemies. Let's stop being competitors. Let's become something better. What's that? Marcus smiled a real smile, warm and genuine. Partners. The press conference made national news. But what happened afterward was more important. Diana and Marcus began meeting weekly, first to discuss the Webb Fellowship, then to talk about physics, then simply to talk. The conversations started formal and gradually became something else. Two minds engaging in the pure joy of intellectual exchange. Diana discovered that Marcus's approach to physics was unlike anything she had encountered. Where she relied on formal methods and established techniques, he found unexpected connections, saw patterns that others missed, intuited solutions before he could prove them. "How do you do that?" she asked one afternoon after Marcus had sketched out a solution to a problem that had stumped her for weeks. Do what? See things that aren't there. Or rather, see things that are there but invisible to everyone else. Marcus thought about the question. I spent 9 years watching people, really watching them. When you're invisible, you have time to observe, to notice how things connect. Physics is the same way. The equations are just descriptions of connections that already exist. That's beautiful. It's true, which is the same thing. Diana found herself looking forward to their meetings with an intensity that surprised her. Marcus was different from anyone she had ever known, not just intellectually, but personally. He didn't play games. He didn't posture. He said what he meant and meant what he said. And he saw her, really saw her. Not the Harvard PhD, not the prestigious professor, not the woman who had humiliated herself on national television, just Diana. It had been a long time since anyone had done that. 3 months after the Newton Prize competition, Lily's surgery finally arrived. Dr. Nina Parkhurst met Marcus and Lily in the pre-operative waiting area at 7 in the morning. The procedure would take 6 to 8 hours, the longest, most complex surgery of Lily's young life. Are you scared, sweetheart? Lily looked up at her father from the hospital bed, her small body dwarfed by the medical equipment surrounding her. A little bit. Marcus took her hand. That's okay. Being scared is normal. Are you scared, Daddy? Yes. Very scared. But you're still here. I'll always be here, Lily. No matter what. Lily squeezed his hand. Daddy, can I tell you something? Anything. I'm glad you solved the professor's equation. Not because you won, because you're smiling more now. You look like yourself. Marcus felt his throat tighten. When did you get so wise? I told you. I learned from watching you. Dr. Parkhurst entered the room, her expression professional but kind. It's time, Lily. Are you ready? Lily looked at her father one more time. To the moon and back. To the moon and back, times infinity. She smiled, and then the nurses wheeled her toward the operating room. Marcus sat alone in the waiting room, his hands clasped between his knees, watching the clock tick through the slowest hours of his life. Samuel Chen arrived at 9. Diana Hartwell arrived at 10, carrying coffee and sandwiches that Marcus couldn't eat. They sat with him in silence, not trying to fill the void with empty words, just being present. At 2 in the afternoon, Marcus's phone rang. Mr. Webb. This is Evelyn Ashbourne. I wanted to check in. How is Lily? Still in surgery. We're waiting. I'm praying for her. For both of you. Thank you, Mrs. Ashbourne, for everything. Call me Evelyn. And don't thank me. This is what money is supposed to be for. At 4:30, Dr. Parkhurst emerged from the surgical wing. Marcus was on his feet before she had taken 3 steps. The surgery was successful. The words didn't register at first. Marcus stared at her, afraid to believe. Lily is going to be fine. The repair was textbook. Her heart function is already improving. With proper recovery, she should be able to live a completely normal life. Marcus's legs gave out. Samuel caught him, easing him into a chair, while Diana gripped his shoulder. "She's okay," Marcus whispered. "She's okay." "She's more than okay." Dr. Parkhurst smiled. "She's asking for you. She woke up about 20 minutes ago, and the first thing she said was, 'Tell my daddy I'm still the smartest.'" Marcus laughed through his tears. "That's my girl." They let him see her an hour later. Lily was pale, her small body connected to monitors and IV lines, but her eyes were bright. "Hi, Daddy." Marcus sat beside her bed, taking her hand as gently as he could. "Hi, sweetheart. Did I scare you?" "A little bit." "I'm sorry." "Don't be sorry. You were very brave." Lily was quiet for a moment. Then, "Daddy, is the professor lady here?" "Professor Hartwell." "Yes, she's in the waiting room." "Can she come see me?" Marcus hesitated. "Why?" "Because she helped you remember who you are, and I want to thank her." 15 minutes later, Diana Hartwell stood awkwardly at the foot of Lily's hospital bed, clearly uncertain what to say to the 9-year-old who had just survived major heart surgery. "Hi, Lily. I'm Professor Hartwell." "I know who you are." Lily studied her with the fearless directness of childhood. "You're the lady who said mean things to my daddy." Diana flinched. "Yes, I was, and I'm very sorry. But then you helped him win the competition. I gave him the chance to compete, but he won on his own." Lily nodded seriously, as if this distinction was important. "My daddy says you're partners now." "We're trying to be." "Good." Lily smiled weakly. "Because my daddy needs friends. He works too much and worries too much, and sometimes he forgets to be happy. Maybe you can help him remember." Diana glanced at Marcus, who was staring at his daughter with an expression of wonder. "I'll try." "Promise?" Diana felt something shift in her chest. This child, this small, fragile, impossibly wise child, was asking her to make a commitment. Not to Marcus, to happiness. "I promise." Lily's smile widened. "Good. Now I need to sleep. Being brave is very tiring." She closed her eyes, and within moments, her breathing had deepened into sleep. Marcus walked Diana to the door of the recovery room. They stood in the hallway, neither quite sure what to say. "Your daughter is extraordinary. She gets it from her father." Diana laughed softly. Still confident. Still clear. They looked at each other for a long moment. Something passed between them. Not romance, not yet, but the beginning of something. The recognition of two people who had hurt each other, challenged each other, and somehow emerged on the other side with the possibility of something new. "Marcus." "Yes." "When Lily is better and things have settled down, would you like to have dinner with me?" Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Are you asking me on a date, Professor Hartwell?" "I'm asking you to share a meal with me, as equals. What happens after that is up to the universe." Marcus smiled. Lily would approve of that philosophy. "Is that a yes?" "It's a yes." 6 months later, Marcus Webb returned to Princeton to complete his doctoral dissertation. Dr. Samuel Chen met him at the entrance to the physics building, the same building where Marcus had once dreamed of changing the world. "Welcome back. It feels strange, like coming home to a place that isn't quite home anymore." "It will be. Give it time." Marcus walked through the halls past offices and laboratories and lecture rooms filled with the next generation of physicists. Everything was familiar and foreign, at the same time echoes of who he had been layered over the reality of who he had become. His new office was small but functional. Samuel had made sure of that. On the desk, Marcus found a framed photograph, Lily grinning at the camera, holding a sign that read, "My daddy is a physicist." He picked up the frame and smiled. A knock at the door made him turn. Diana Hartwell stood in the doorway holding 2 cups of coffee. "I thought you might need this." "You drove 3 hours to bring me coffee." "I drove 3 hours to see your face when you walked into this building." She handed him a cup. "And to bring you coffee." They stood together in the small office looking out the window at the Princeton campus spread beneath them. "Are you ready for this?" Diana asked. "I don't know. Completing a dissertation is supposed to take years. They're giving me 6 months. You solved my 4-year problem in 90 minutes. 6 months seems generous." Marcus laughed. "Fair point. Besides, you're not alone this time. Samuel is here. I'm here. Lily will be here every weekend." Diana paused. "You have people now, Marcus. People who see you, who believe in you, who won't let you disappear again." Marcus looked at her, this woman who had tried to destroy him, who had become his partner, who was slowly becoming something more. "Thank you, Diana." "For what?" "For writing that equation on the board, for daring me to solve it." Diana shook her head. "I was trying to humiliate you." "I know, but sometimes the universe works through the people we least expect." She smiled. "Now you're quoting yourself." "Lily taught me that confidence is just clarity with better marketing." They laughed together, and the sound filled the small office like a promise. 1 year later, Marcus Webb defended his doctoral dissertation to a packed audience at Princeton University. The title was Classical Methods in Quantum Field Theory, a Unified Approach. It built on the work he had done 10 years earlier, expanded by everything he had learned in the years of invisible study that had followed. The defense lasted 4 hours. The committee grilled him on every detail, challenged every assumption, tested every conclusion. Marcus answered each question with the calm precision that had become his signature, not because he was certain, but because he had learned to trust himself. When the committee emerged from their deliberation, Samuel Chen was smiling. "Congratulations, Dr. Webb." The room erupted in applause. Lily ran to her father and jumped into his arms, her heart now healed, now strong, beating steady against his chest. "You did it, Daddy." "We did it, sweetheart, together." Diana Hartwell stood at the back of the room watching. She had traveled from Glenwood to witness this moment, the culmination of everything they had built together. Later that evening, after the celebration had wound down and Lily had fallen asleep on Samuel's couch, Marcus found Diana standing alone on the Princeton campus, looking up at the stars. "Penny for your thoughts." Diana turned. "I was thinking about that night. The night you walked into my lecture hall. The night you told me to get out and stop pretending I understood anything. That's the one." She was quiet for a moment. "I was so certain that day. Certain I was right. Certain you were wrong. Certain the world worked exactly the way I believed it did. And now I'm certain of almost nothing. And somehow that feels like progress." Marcus stepped closer. "Diana, I need to tell you something." "What?" "The night you wrote that equation on the board, the night you dared me to solve it, I almost walked away. I almost let you win." Diana stared at him. "Why didn't you?" "Because I thought about Lily, about what she would think if her father gave up, about the kind of example I wanted to set." He paused. "And because I realized something. You weren't my enemy. You were my mirror." "Your mirror? You showed me who I had become. A man so beaten down by life that he was willing to accept invisibility as permanent. A man who had convinced himself that his dreams were dead." Marcus's voice softened. "You woke me up, Diana. Not gently, not kindly, but you woke me up." Diana's eyes glistened in the starlight. "I never meant to help you." "I know, but you did anyway." He took her hand. "The universe works through the people we least expect." Remember. Diana laughed through her tears. You really need to stop quoting yourself. Make me. She looked at him for a long moment. Then she stepped forward and kissed him. It was gentle at first, tentative. Two people who had been enemies, then partners, now discovering what came next. But as the kiss deepened, something settled between them. Not certainty. Not a promise of forever. Just the recognition that they had both been lost, and somehow, impossibly, they had found each other. When they finally pulled apart, Diana was smiling. So, what happens now, Dr. Webb? Marcus looked up at the stars, at the universe that had taken so much from him, and somehow given him everything he needed. Now we find out what the universe has planned. 3 years later, Marcus Webb stood at the podium of the American Physical Society's annual conference. The audience before him included Nobel laureates, university presidents, and some of the most brilliant minds in physics. But the face he looked for was in the front row. Lily, now 12 years old, sat between Samuel Chen and Diana Hartwell, Dr. Diana Webb, as of 8 months ago. Good afternoon, Marcus began. I'm here to talk about my research on classical methods in quantum field theory. But first, I want to tell you a story. He looked at his wife, at his daughter, at the mentor who had never given up on him. 12 years ago, I walked away from physics. I did it because my daughter was sick, because I couldn't afford to keep her alive any other way, because I believed that sacrifice meant giving up who I was. The audience was silent, riveted. For 9 years, I pushed a cleaning cart through university hallways. I emptied trash cans. I mopped floors. I restocked toilet paper. And every night during the few quiet minutes I had between buildings, I read physics journals and pretended that part of me hadn't died. He paused. Then one night, I walked into a lecture hall and made a mistake. I corrected a professor's equation. She challenged me to solve a problem no one thought I could solve, and I did. Marcus looked directly at Diana. That professor is now my wife, and I am here today because she gave me a chance. Not a kind chance, not a fair chance, but a chance. He turned back to the audience. I'm telling you this because I want you to understand something. There are people in this country and this world who are invisible. People with brilliant minds and extraordinary potential who work jobs that hide who they really are. They clean your offices. They serve your coffee. They stand in the background of your lives and you never notice them. His voice grew stronger. But they are there, and they are waiting for someone to see them. Waiting for a chance to prove what they're capable of. Waiting for the universe to remember that talent doesn't care about degrees or pedigrees or the clothes you wear. Marcus picked up a piece of chalk, the same chalk he had used that night in Diana's lecture hall, and began to write on the board behind him. This is the equation that changed my life. This is the problem that a Harvard professor thought would humiliate a janitor. And this is the solution that proved her wrong. The equations flowed across the board, elegant and precise. Physics is about understanding the universe, but the universe doesn't exist only in laboratories and lecture halls. It exists in the hallways we walk through without looking, in the faces we pass without seeing, in the stories we never bother to ask. He set down the chalk. My name is Dr. Marcus Webb. I was a janitor. I am a physicist. And I am proof that the only limits that matter are the ones we place on ourselves. The applause that followed was unlike anything Marcus had ever heard. It built slowly at first, then swelled into a roar that shook the auditorium. People rose to their feet not just to honor his research, but to honor his journey. In the front row, Lily was crying. Diana was crying. Even Samuel Chen, who had seen everything in 40 years of physics, was wiping his eyes. Marcus stood at the podium, looking out at the sea of faces, and allowed himself to feel something he had denied himself for so long. Pride. Not the pride of achievement, not the pride of recognition, but the deeper pride that comes from surviving the impossible and emerging with your soul intact. Later that night, after the standing ovation, and the handshakes and the endless questions, Marcus walked across campus with Diana, their fingers intertwined. How does it feel? Diana asked. Finally being seen. Marcus thought about the question. About the years of invisibility. About the sacrifices and the pain and the moments when he had wanted to give up. About Lily's small hand in his, about Diana's challenge that had become a gift about the universe that had seemed so cruel and had somehow led him here. "It feels like coming home," he said, "to a place I never knew existed." Diana squeezed his hand. "And what now?" Marcus looked up at the stars, the same stars he had studied as a young man full of dreams, the same stars he had watched during lonely night shifts, the same stars that had witnessed his fall and his rise. "Now we help others find their way home." Diana smiled. "That sounds like a lifetime of work." "Good thing we have a lifetime." They walked together into the night, two people who had found each other through conflict and pain and the strange grace of second chances. Behind them in the auditorium, they had left Marcus's equations, still covered the board, a testament to the truth that genius doesn't wear a uniform, that brilliance doesn't need permission, and that the universe in its infinite complexity always finds a way to reveal what was hidden. And in the front row, a 12-year-old girl with a scar on her chest and starlight in her eyes looked at her father's work and smiled. Because she had always known. The universe works by helping people who deserve it. And sometimes the person you least expect becomes the person who changes everything.